I worked hard to build a life with Sarah, my wife of 8 years. We had a beautiful home, successful business, and what I thought was a solid marriage. Her wealthy family never approved of me, but I figured time would heal those wounds. Then one evening, her brothers showed up at our doorstep with moving boxes. Sarah stood behind them with a cold expression I had never seen before. As they started grabbing my belongings, confusion washed over me. Before I continue this story about the day everything changed, let me know where you are watching from. Hit the like and subscribe buttons if you have ever been underestimated and came back stronger. I built my life from nothing. Growing up in a small town in Pennsylvania, I learned the value of hard work early on. My parents struggled to make ends meet, but they instilled in me a fierce work ethic that would eventually lead to my success. By 30, I had established a thriving construction supply company that serviced 3 states. I was proud of what I had accomplished, but still felt something was missing in my personal life. That all changed when I met Sarah at a charity gala 5 years ago. She was breathtaking. In a midnight blue gown, her golden hair cascading down her shoulders. I almost spilled my drink when she approached me to ask about my donation to the children's hospital. There was an immediate connection between us, a spark that ignited into something beautiful. Sarah came from the prestigious Wilson family owners of Wilson Enterprises, a multinational corporation with deep roots in our city. From our first date, I knew her family might be an issue. She mentioned their protective nature, especially her brothers James and Thomas, who handled much of the family business operations. Despite their objections, Sarah and I fell deeply in love. Our courtship was a whirlwind of romantic dinners, weekend getaways, and long conversations about our dreams. 6 months after we met, I proposed on a private yacht under the stars. The joy in her eyes when she said yes is something I will never forget. Our wedding was elegant, but tense. The Wilson family attended out of obligation, making their disapproval clear. James and Thomas barely acknowledged me during the reception, treating me like an intruder rather than a new family member. Sarah assured me they would come around eventually. I believed her. Using my savings, we purchased a beautiful colonial home in an upscale neighborhood. I insisted on putting the house in both our names, wanting Sarah to feel secure in our partnership. I renovated it myself, adding a gourmet kitchen for Sarah, who loved to cook, and a home office where I could work late into the night when necessary. Our home became our sanctuary. The first few years of marriage were blissful. Sarah supported my business ventures, attending client dinners, and helping me network with influential people. I felt like the luckiest man alive, having both professional success and a loving wife. About 6 months ago, things began to change. Sarah became distant, often losing herself in thought during our conversations. She started taking phone calls in private, something she had never done before. When I asked if everything was okay, she would smile tightly and say she was just tired or stressed about family matters. Her brothers began visiting more frequently, sometimes when I was at work. I would return home to find them huddled with Sarah in the living room, conversations that would abruptly halt when I entered. Something felt off, but I trusted my wife completely. Then came that fateful evening, when James and Thomas arrived with moving boxes. Sarah stood between them, arms crossed over her chest as they entered our home without waiting for an invitation. "What is going on?" I asked, watching in confusion, as Thomas headed straight upstairs with an empty box. "Andrew," Sarah said coolly, "I think it is time you moved out." The words hit me like a physical blow. 8 years of marriage, and she delivered this news with the emotional investment of someone canceling a dinner reservation. "What are you talking about? This is our home," I said, struggling to comprehend what was happening. James, the older and more intimidating of the brothers, stepped forward. "Sarah has decided she wants a divorce. We are here to make sure the transition goes smoothly." The condescending tone in his voice suggested I might cause a scene. In their eyes, I was still the unworthy commoner who had somehow tricked their sister into marriage. "Sarah, can we talk about this privately?" I pleaded, still believing there must be some explanation, some misunderstanding that could be resolved. She shook her head. "There is nothing to discuss, Andrew. I have made my decision. As Thomas descended the stairs with a box of my clothes, the reality began to sink in. This was not a bad dream. This was happening. My wife of 8 years was kicking me out of our home with her brothers as enforcers. James circled me like a predator, his expensive suit unable to hide his athletic build. Listen, man, you can do this the easy way or the hard way. Sarah wants you gone. That is all you need to know. Thomas dumped the box of my clothes on the floor. Did you really think someone like you would keep someone like her forever? The construction guy and the Wilson princess. He laughed, the sound echoing painfully through the home I had renovated with my own hands. Sarah, please. I turned to my wife, searching for any sign of the woman I had loved for nearly a decade. Whatever is wrong, we can fix it. Marriage counseling. A vacation. Anything. I have been talking to a divorce lawyer for months. She admitted, her voice devoid of emotion. The papers will be ready next week. This marriage was a mistake from the beginning. The revelation staggered me. Months. While I had been working extra hours to surprise her with the European vacation she had always wanted, she had been planning her exit. We told her this would not last, James said smugly. Sarah went through a rebellious phase, wanted to prove she could make her own decisions. Now she has come to her senses. Sarah nodded. My family was right about us. We come from different worlds, Andrew. I married you partly to show them I could choose my own path. But some differences cannot be overcome. I stood frozen, trying to process this betrayal. The woman who had promised to love me forever was now admitting our entire relationship had been built partially on rebellion. You need to leave now, Thomas insisted, grabbing my arm roughly. I jerked away. Do not touch me. This is still legally my house too. James moved closer, using his height to intimidate me. We checked. The house might be in both your names, but Sarah has rights to live here during divorce proceedings. You are the one who needs to find somewhere else to stay. And I emptied our joint account this morning, Sarah added casually. Consider it a down payment on what I deserve after wasting 8 years with you. The calculated nature of their plan became clear. This was not a spontaneous decision, but a coordinated attack. He is too weak to stop us, Thomas muttered to James, loud enough for me to hear. Look at him. Pathetic. I asked for a few minutes to gather some personal items from my office. Surprisingly, they agreed, though James warned me not to take anything valuable. In my office, the gravity of the situation fully hit me. Photos of Sarah and me in happier times mocked me from the walls. I sank into my chair, struggling to breathe through the tightness in my chest. While sitting there, I noticed some documents Sarah had left on the credenza. Curious, I glanced through them and discovered something shocking. The Wilson family business was in serious financial trouble. There were bank notices about defaulted loans and threats of foreclosure on several properties. Then it hit me. My business had been thriving, expanding rapidly over the past 2 years. Was that the real target here? I remembered signing some papers for Sarah several months ago when I was rushing to a meeting. She had said they were just insurance documents that needed my signature. I had trusted her completely, not even reading the fine print. Before I could investigate further, the office door crashed open. James and Thomas stood there, faces twisted with impatience. Time is up, James announced. Get your things and get out. When I tried to take the financial documents I had found, Thomas grabbed them from my hand. These belong to Sarah, he snarled. What happened next still feels surreal. When I refused to leave without a proper explanation, the brothers physically grabbed me. I fought back, but it was 2 against 1. The scuffle escalated quickly, furniture crashing to the floor as they wrestled me toward the front door. Sarah watched from the staircase, not intervening, even when Thomas landed a painful blow to my ribs. They shoved me out the front door, throwing a single suitcase after me. It burst open on the driveway, my clothes scattering across the concrete. Just accept it and move on, Sarah advised coldly from the doorway. Do not make this more difficult than it needs to be. I spent that night in my car parked at my office building too, ashamed to call any friends yet. Sleep evaded me as I replayed every moment of my marriage, searching for the warning signs I had missed. By dawn, I was exhausted, heartbroken, and angry. Not just at them, but at myself for being so blind. Out of habit, I checked my business emails on my phone. That is when I saw notifications of attempted changes to my company ownership documents. Someone had tried to transfer partial ownership, but had been denied due to missing electronic signatures. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. My difficult childhood had taught me one crucial lesson: never be a victim if you can help it. I had vowed long ago to protect myself, and thankfully that instinct had not abandoned me, even in the comfort of marriage. I drove to my office while the city was still waking up. My assistant would not arrive for hours, giving me the privacy I needed. First, I called Daniel, my lawyer, an old college friend. They did what Daniel exclaimed after I explained the situation. "Andrew, I hate to ask this, but are you sure Sarah was not having an affair?" "This is not about another man," I said with certainty. "This is about money. My money." Daniel arrived within 30 minutes, still in jogging clothes. He pulled up my business documents on his laptop. "Thank God for your paranoia," he said, showing me the protection clauses we had put in place when my business first took off. "Remember these. Any transfer of ownership requires triple authentication, including in-person verification with both our signatures." Those precautions, which had seemed excessive at the time, had just saved my company. But why would Sarah and her brothers target my business now? "Let me make some calls," Daniel said, stepping out. While waiting, I remembered Sarah had left her tablet in my car a week earlier. She had been looking for it frantically, but then suddenly said she would just buy a new one. I retrieved it from my glove compartment and charged it. The password was our anniversary date, something that now felt like a cruel joke. What I found confirmed my suspicions. Emails between Sarah and her brothers detailed their financial collapse. The Wilson Construction Division had taken massive losses on overseas projects. They needed capital desperately, and my thriving business represented a solution. Most damning was an email from Thomas: "Sarah, just get him to sign the preliminary transfers. Once we have partial ownership, we can push him out completely. He trusts you blindly." There was more. Voice recordings of meetings where they had plotted everything, including the confrontation at our house. They had even discussed how to provoke me into violence, so they could file a restraining order. Daniel returned with crucial information. Wilson Construction is filing for bankruptcy next week. It is not public yet, but my source is solid. They are underwater by millions. They will not take me down with them. I stated, a new resolve hardening within me. We spent the next 4 hours executing a counterattack. First, we froze all accounts connected to my business and revoked any access credentials Sarah might have. Next, we filed emergency injunctions against Sarah and her brothers, preventing them from entering any of my business properties or contacting my employees. I called several wealthy clients who had pending projects with both my company and Wilson Enterprises, discreetly informing them of potential disruptions at Wilson. Without directly accusing anyone, I ensured my clients would protect their investments by shifting more business my way. Daniel discovered something else. The house paperwork has an interesting clause. Since you paid 100% of the down payment and have records of paying all mortgage payments from your personal account, not the joint account, you can petition for exclusive occupancy during divorce proceedings, especially if you can prove hostile removal. By noon, we had filed the necessary paperwork with the courts. I had also contacted the police to file a report about being physically assaulted and forcibly removed from my residence. The final touch was serving Sarah and her brothers with legal papers right as they were meeting with their own lawyers. According to Daniel's assistant who delivered the documents, their faces had turned white with shock. My phone began ringing nonstop. First James, then Thomas, then Sarah. I ignored them all. Let them panic. Let them realize who they were dealing with. The masterstroke came when Thomas called my office line, not realizing it was being recorded as per my company policy. In his desperation, he admitted everything, threatening me again, but also revealing their entire plan. That recording was immediately sent to my lawyer as additional evidence. When I finally answered Sarah's call, I simply said, "I will see you in court," and hung up. The scene outside my office the next morning was exactly as I had anticipated. Sarah, James, and Thomas were waiting in the parking lot, their luxury vehicles parked haphazardly, as if they had arrived in a panic. "Andrew, please, we need to talk," Sarah called out as I approached, her voice lacking the coldness from yesterday. Now she sounded desperate, even frightened. I walked past them, without acknowledgement, heading straight for the entrance. "You cannot do this to us," James said, grabbing my arm. I looked pointedly at his hand, until he released me, remembering perhaps that his actions were what had landed them in this situation. "The Wilson name means something in this city," Thomas threatened weakly. "You will regret this." I finally turned to face them. The Wilson name. The same name that will be associated with bankruptcy fraud once the papers are filed. The same name attached to the recorded conspiracy to illegally seize my company. That Wilson name, their faces confirmed. They understood the gravity of their situation. Everything they had done, everything they had planned, had backfired spectacularly. "Our family business is on the brink," Sarah admitted, tears streaking her makeup. "My brothers convinced me this was the only way. I never wanted to hurt you. Yet you watched them physically throw me out of our home," I replied calmly. "You told me to just accept it and move on. We can work something out," James suggested, his arrogance replaced by panic. "A loan, a partnership, anything." I unlocked my office door before turning back to them. "Here are my terms. 1. You all sign statements admitting to conspiracy and attempted fraud. 2. Sarah agrees to an uncontested divorce, with no claims against my business or personal assets. 3. The Wilson family issues a public apology for the physical assault. Do this and I might not press criminal charges against your brothers." "Criminal charges," Thomas sputtered. "Assault, conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted corporate theft," I listed. My security cameras caught everything at the house. Should be enough for the district attorney, who coincidentally is a major client. The community rallied around me once the story spread through business circles. Many had experienced the Wilson family's arrogance over the years and were not unhappy to see them humbled. My business actually grew as contractors, who had previously been intimidated into working exclusively with Wilson Construction, now felt free to partner with me. Reclaiming my house was surprisingly straightforward with the evidence we had gathered. The locks were changed while Sarah was meeting with her family attorneys. Her belongings were packed by a professional service and delivered to her parents' estate. The hardest part was walking back into what had once been our home. Every room held memories of a marriage I now questioned whether it had ever been real. I considered selling the house, but decided against it. I would not let them take anything more from me. Healing came slowly. The betrayal cut deep, especially knowing Sarah had been plotting against me for months while sharing my bed, my home, my life. I threw myself into work, initially expanding the business into neighboring states, but eventually I recognized the need to address my emotional wounds as well. Throughout the legal proceedings, I worked closely with Melissa, an attorney from Daniel's firm who specialized in complex divorce cases. Her calm competence and genuine compassion provided steady support during the darkest days. When the case finally concluded 6 months later, I asked her to dinner not as a client, but as a man interested in knowing her better. Her smile when she accepted began to thaw the ice around my heart. I had one final meeting with Sarah after the divorce was finalized. She had requested it, and against Daniel's advice, I agreed. "I am sorry," she said, simply looking years older than when we had married. Why, I asked the question that had haunted me for months. Was any of it real? Sarah stared into her coffee cup. Most of it was real. I did love you. But family loyalty runs deep in the Wilsons. When James and Thomas showed me the financial reports, convinced me our family legacy was at stake. She trailed off. I made an unforgivable choice. I nodded, surprised to find that her explanation brought no satisfaction, no closure. "I hope you find whatever it is you are looking for, Sarah. Walking away from that coffee shop, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I had not forgiven her, or her brothers. Their crimes against me could not be easily dismissed. But I was no longer carrying the burning rage that had consumed me for months. That, I realized, was its own kind of victory. The greatest revenge was living well. My business continued to thrive, and the experience led me to create a foundation that helped victims of financial abuse, particularly those targeted by family members. The work was healing, allowing something positive to grow from the ashes of betrayal. Melissa and I grew closer, our relationship deepening from mutual respect into something that made me believe in trust again. She understood my caution, never pushing for more than I was ready to give. I still live in the house Sarah and I shared, but it feels like mine now. New furniture, new colors, new memories being made. The painful ones have not disappeared, but they have faded into lessons that made me stronger, wiser, more compassionate toward others who have been betrayed. Sometimes strength is not about how hard you can hit back, but about how well you can rebuild. I lost my marriage but found myself in the process. The man who was kicked out of his own house that night was not the same man who now stands on his own 2 feet unshakable. Life will knock you down sometimes. People you trust will betray you, but when you rise again, and I promise you can always rise again, you will be stronger at the broken places. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal? Share your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life experiences. And remember, sometimes when others underestimate you, it becomes their greatest mistake. Thank you for listening, and never let anyone tell you that you are too weak to stand your ground.